Have you ever wondered why sometimes God separates you from everything familiar, everything comfortable, just before a great breakthrough? Isolation often feels confusing, even painful, but it's critical to understand that it's not a form of punishment. It's God's way of preparing you for what's next. God isolates you because he sees what you're meant to become, and he's drawing you toward it. First, realize that God's isolation is purposeful. Isolation often feels like the most bewildering experience, one that makes you question, why has God placed me here? It can be disorienting, and sometimes it seems to defy reason. But in those moments of separation and solitude, God is at work in ways that only become clear in hindsight. When God isolates you, it's not out of neglect or punishment. It's a deliberate and calculated move designed to shape, refine, and ready you for the purpose he has in store. You see, there's a profound difference between being abandoned and being set apart. In God's kingdom, isolation has a divine intention, a purpose that far outweighs the discomfort it brings in the present. Consider how God has used isolation in the lives of those he called to greatness. Take Joseph, for example, a man who was betrayed by his own brothers, thrown into a pit, sold into slavery, and ultimately imprisoned in a foreign land. To an outsider, Joseph's journey seemed like a series of misfortunes, one setback after another, but God was using each moment of isolation to prepare him for a destiny far beyond his imagination. When Joseph was alone in that prison, God was cultivating in him the resilience, wisdom, and humility needed to govern an entire nation. Had Joseph remained in the comfort of his father's house, he would never have developed the qualities necessary to lead Egypt through years of abundance and famine. God's isolation was intentional. It was the groundwork for something far greater than Joseph could have envisioned. Isolation also has a unique way of revealing what is hidden, both in our character and in our lives. When God removes the support systems we once relied upon, we begin to see our weaknesses, our insecurities, and the parts of us that need healing. In the quiet spaces, God reveals what's within us that must be refined before we're ready for his blessings. Often, he removes the distractions and the influences that cloud our vision, enabling us to see things clearly. It is in these moments of solitude that God works on our hearts, stripping away pride, selfishness, and any attachment to things that would only hinder our progress. The isolation becomes a refining fire, burning away what no longer serves us so that we can carry out his purpose with integrity and strength. In God's process, isolation is a protective cocoon. When he isolates you, he often shields you from premature exposure to things that would otherwise derail your growth. Sometimes God knows that if he were to release you into your blessing before you were ready, the weight of it would be too much to bear. Like a butterfly struggling to emerge from a cocoon, your development requires a hidden place away from the pressures of people's expectations and the rush of life. God's isolation is his way of saying, you're not yet ready, but I'm going to make you ready. So he surrounds you in solitude, protecting you from influences that would divert you from his plan. He is a God who loves you enough to say, not yet, because he sees the bigger picture and he knows the magnitude of what he's preparing you for. In isolation, God also creates an environment where our relationship with him can deepen. With people and distractions removed, you're left with an open space to experience God more intimately. This alone time with him cultivates a dependency and closeness that could not develop in any other way. Often in the noise of life, God's voice can be faint, overshadowed by the demands and expectations of others. But in isolation, his voice becomes clear, unmistakable, and profound. God's purpose for isolating you is to draw you closer to him, to teach you that he is all you need, that his presence is enough. As you lean into him, you discover a level of peace, strength, and assurance that only comes from a relationship deeply rooted in trust. Isolation is also God's means of clarifying purpose. The pressures of the outside world can cloud our understanding, making it difficult to discern God's will. When God isolates you, he's removing those distractions so you can hear him with clarity. Isolation cuts through the noise, the opinions, and the voices of those around you, allowing you to perceive God's direction with a sharp focus. When you're left alone with your thoughts and with his word, God reveals a path that might have gone unnoticed otherwise. It's in these moments that God whispers his plans for you, Plans that might have seemed improbable, but in the quiet become undeniable. Isolation serves as a crucible faith. When God isolates you, He's testing and refining your trust in Him. Without the comfort of others, you're left to rely solely on His promises. It's here, in the moments when no one else is around, that your faith grows in ways it never could in the presence of others. In the stillness, your doubts surface, and you're faced with the choice to either hold on to God or fall into despair. Isolation forces you to examine what you truly believe, and it provides the space for God to strengthen your faith, preparing you to handle the blessings that require a steadfast heart. God's isolation is never about punishment, it's about preparation. He's shaping you, preparing you, and instilling in you the resilience and character that will sustain you in the days to come. What may seem like loneliness is actually divine intention at work. Each moment of solitude is a step toward the life He has crafted for you, a life that requires a depth of strength, faith, and vision that only isolation can create. God is not abandoning you, He is equipping you. When God calls you into a season of isolation, He's setting you aside not to punish, but to refine. Isolation often feels uncomfortable and challenging, but it's precisely in those solitary moments that God shapes the depth of your character. We don't always understand why He has to take us through such a path, but isolation is His way of polishing and molding us to embody virtues we might have otherwise overlooked. God knows what's required for the destiny He has in store, and He uses isolation to forge the strength, patience, and humility that will sustain you in the coming seasons. Consider the process of refining precious metals like gold. The gold is placed into a furnace, and under intense heat, impurities rise to the surface, allowing them to be removed. The end result is something pure, something more valuable than before. Isolation acts as a similar furnace, turning up the heat and testing the core of who you are. When you're alone, separated from the comfort of familiar voices and support, your character is revealed in its truest form. You see, God is more interested in developing your character than in simply delivering you to your dreams. He is a God who values the inner life, the integrity, and the resilience within you. So when He isolates you, it's to reveal and then refine the aspects of your character that need to be strengthened. One of the virtues most often cultivated in isolation is patience. In today's world, patience is rare. We're surrounded by instant solutions and fast-paced lifestyles that leave little room for waiting. But patience is a cornerstone of spiritual maturity. God uses isolation to teach you the virtue of waiting, not just waiting for time to pass, but waiting with purpose and trust. When you're isolated and the promise seems far off, you learn to release your own timeline and submit to God's perfect timing. This kind of patience builds a strength that is not easily shaken. You come to realize that rushing ahead without God's blessing leads only to frustration and setback, whereas waiting on His direction opens doors that no one else can open. Patience in isolation transforms you from someone who reacts impulsively to someone who moves with calm assurance, trusting that God is never late and never early, but always right on time. Humility is another virtue that God instills in times of isolation. When you're separated from the crowd, from praise, recognition, and the assurance of others, you are confronted with who you truly are. It's in isolation that you begin to see yourself without the filters of others' opinions or validations. You see both your strengths and your weaknesses, and you come face to face with the realization that apart from God, you can do nothing. This understanding breeds a humility that grounds you. You realize that you are not the center of the universe, and that your achievements, your talents, and your plans are only as valuable as your alignment with God's will. In isolation, God strips away any illusions of self-sufficiency, teaching you to rely fully on Him. This humility isn't about thinking less of yourself. It's about recognizing that God is the source of all things, and that without His guidance, your efforts are in vain. Humility gained in isolation is what will keep you steady when success comes, reminding you that all glory belongs to God alone. And then there's resilience, a trait that isolation builds uniquely. Resilience is the capacity to withstand hardship, to persevere through trials without losing hope. In isolation, you often face challenges that test your resolve. You may experience doubt, frustration, and the temptation to give up, but these very moments are where resilience is born. God allows you to encounter difficulty so that you develop a strength that endures. Without resilience, blessings become burdens and challenges feel insurmountable. Isolation teaches you to push past discouragement and to keep moving forward, even when you don't see the finish line. The resilience that God builds in isolation will carry you through life's storms, allowing you to stand firm when others might fall. It's a strength rooted not in sheer willpower, but in the confidence that God is with you every step of the way, turning every trial into triumph. In isolation, these virtues, patience, humility, and resilience become part of who you are. Not because you acquire them in passing, but because you wrestle with them in the hidden places. These aren't qualities that can be learned overnight or in times of ease. They are forged in difficulty, in silence, and in solitude. God uses isolation to grow these virtues in you because He knows that the life He's calling you to will demand a solid foundation. Character isn't built on applause or easy circumstances. It's built in the shadows where only you and God walk together. It's in these moments that your spirit is strengthened, that you gain a depth of character able to withstand both blessing and adversity. This refinement process is essential because the blessing God has in mind is weighty. It's not just about receiving something good, it's about becoming someone capable of sustaining that good thing. Without patience, you might miss the best because you settle for the quickest. Without humility, you might claim credit that belongs to God. And without resilience, you might crumble under pressure when challenges arise. God isolates you to ensure that when the blessing comes, you'll not only enjoy it, but steward it well with the character required to see it flourish. Isolation, then, is not a waste of time. It's not a detour, but a direct path to a deeper relationship with God and a more resilient, humble, and patient character. When you understand that God is using this season to prepare and refine you, you'll begin to view it not as a setback, but as a sacred opportunity. This is the place where God polishes your heart, strengthens your resolve, and molds your spirit. When God brings you into a season of isolation, He's offering you a priceless opportunity to know Him on a level that can only be reached in solitude. Life is filled with voices, expectations, and pressures that constantly pull us in different directions. In these busy spaces, we can lose sight of God's presence, hearing Him faintly through the noise. But in isolation, God's voice becomes the guiding sound, His presence the central focus, and His word the source of your strength. This season of separation isn't about punishment, but about deepening the most essential relationship of your life, the one between you and God. Isolation creates a space where God has your full attention. Often we don't realize just how distracted we are until we find ourselves removed from the routines and relationships that have kept us busy. We may think that we're managing well, that we're connecting with God enough, but when we're alone, we see the truth our relationship with God might have been on the periphery. When He isolates us, He draws us into a sacred intimacy that demands focus and devotion. The distractions fade, and in that quiet place, God begins to speak in ways we couldn't hear before. His voice isn't drowned out by daily concerns or overshadowed by others' opinions. It's clear, personal, and transformative. And in those moments, you begin to discover aspects of God's character that can only be experienced in solitude: His patience, His love, His unending faithfulness. This season of isolation teaches you to lean on God as your ultimate source. When we're surrounded by others, we naturally look to them for support, encouragement, and validation. But when God removes these crutches, we're left to depend solely on Him. In this dependency, we learn what it means to trust Him completely. You find that God becomes the friend who is closer than a brother, the confidant who understands everything. With this clarity of purpose comes a strengthened resolve. You gain not only an understanding of your calling, but also a resilience to pursue it. Isolation prepares you to move forward, knowing that God's direction is unmistakable. When doubts arise or when others question your path, you can stand firm, assured by the clarity you gained in your time alone with God. This sense of purpose fortifies you, allowing you to overcome obstacles and resist the urge to abandon the mission. The clarity born in isolation becomes the anchor that keeps you focused, even when the journey becomes challenging. Moreover, isolation reveals the need for alignment between your life and God's purpose. You start to see areas that need refining, attitudes that need reshaping, and habits that need to change. God uses isolation to prune and prepare you so that when the time comes to step fully into your calling, you are ready to fulfill it with integrity. Isolation becomes a place of alignment where God adjusts your heart and mind to reflect His desires, setting you on a course that is in harmony with His will. This alignment doesn't just give you direction, it prepares you to carry out your purpose with the character and wisdom necessary to steward it well. In essence, isolation brings clarity not only to what God is calling you to do, but also to why He's calling you to it. When you understand the why behind your purpose, you approach it with a sense of reverence and responsibility. You're no longer driven by the need for recognition or approval, but by a deep desire to honor God and serve others. This clarity transforms your purpose from a personal ambition into a sacred mission, something you pursue with humility and dedication. So while isolation may feel uncomfortable, it's in this sacred space that God reveals His plans, unveils your potential, and instills in you the conviction to follow His call. The solitude sharpens your vision, strengthens your resolve, and anchors your purpose. When you emerge from this season, you do so with a clear understanding of who you are, what God has called you to do, and why it matters. And with this clarity, you're ready to step forward, confident in the path God has set before you, equipped to make a lasting impact for His kingdom. Isolation is often where God grows you to a place of spiritual maturity that can sustain you through the blessings and challenges of your calling. When you're set apart, He is preparing you to handle not just blessings, but also the responsibilities and trials that come with them. The deeper He's taken you, the stronger your foundation needs to be. This isolation, then, is an environment where God builds within you the depth of faith and resilience needed for the road ahead. Spiritual maturity doesn't develop in comfort, it grows through challenge. And isolation is often challenging, stripping away the ease and assurance of external support. It's in this alone time with God that you learn the discipline of trusting Him without immediate answers, understanding His will without needing visible signs. You come to rely on faith as a guide in ways that might not have been possible before. By taking you away from the familiar, God invites you to root your trust in Him alone. Without the comforts of routine or the encouragement of others, you're left with nothing but your faith, and in this dependency, it deepens, becoming unshakable. This kind of faith forged in isolation is precisely the kind that can withstand the pressures and demands that come with a life aligned with God's purpose. Isolation also builds a discipline of seeking God that becomes a wellspring of spiritual maturity. When you're in solitude, the easy distractions and dependencies fall away, leaving you with time and space to grow in your relationship with God intentionally. You begin to prioritize daily communion with Him, not because of obligation, but out of desire and necessity. This devotion grows into a pattern that strengthens your walk with God, teaching you to lean into His presence and find joy in His companionship. Isolation trains you to build a life around God's presence and His Word, developing a foundation of discipline that carries you forward even when the season of solitude ends. Resilience is another facet of spiritual maturity that isolation builds. Often in life we want the blessings and breakthroughs, but we may not yet have the inner strength to carry them. Isolation teaches you to endure, to hold firm even when answers don't come quickly, to persevere even when the journey feels uncertain. In these moments of waiting and wondering, God stretches your capacity to stand firm in faith, to push past discouragement, and to hold on to hope. It's a refinement process that shapes you into someone who can handle the weight of responsibility with a spirit that doesn't waver. When God isolates you, it's because He's strengthening you for future seasons where your resilience will be essential. You emerge from isolation with a confidence that doesn't come from external success, but from an inner assurance rooted in God's faithfulness. Spiritual maturity also requires wisdom and understanding of God's ways that comes through both revelation and experience. In isolation, God speaks to you in personal, intimate ways, revealing truths and insights that deepen your understanding of His heart. This wisdom is a product of spending time alone with God, listening to Him and allowing His Word to shape you. You begin to see life differently, discerning His perspective in ways that go beyond surface understanding. This wisdom doesn't just prepare you to fulfill your calling, it prepares you to navigate the complexities of life with grace and clarity. God instills this wisdom in isolation so that when the time comes, you have the discernment to make choices that honor Him and benefit others. As God builds spiritual maturity in you, He's also developing humility, a recognition that this journey isn't about self-exaltation, but about serving Him. Isolation strips away any illusions of self-sufficiency, showing you that your purpose is sustained by God's strength, not by your own. In solitude, you learn that apart from Him, you can do nothing, and this understanding humbles you, aligning your heart with His purposes. Spiritual maturity is not about proving yourself, but about submitting yourself to God's will. Isolation deepens this humility, preparing you to carry blessings with gratitude and responsibility rather than pride or entitlement. Isolation refines your ability to listen to and obey God. In the solitude, you become more attuned to His voice, more sensitive to His leading, and more willing to follow where He directs. This attentiveness is crucial to spiritual maturity as it teaches you to move in alignment with God's timing and wisdom rather than your own. God uses isolation to teach you obedience in the small things so that when greater responsibilities come, you're already prepared to follow Him faithfully. This obedience is a hallmark of spiritual maturity, a readiness to act not based on what's convenient or popular, but on what God has revealed. When you emerge from isolation, you carry a spiritual maturity that has been tested and refined. You are no longer dependent on the validation of others or on circumstances for your sense of purpose and security. Instead, you are rooted in a relationship with God that can withstand both the blessings and the challenges that lie ahead. This maturity built in the hidden place of isolation is what sustains you, guides you, and keeps you aligned with God's will in every season. You are prepared, resilient, and ready, not because of your own strength, but because of the depth of faith, wisdom, and discipline God has established within you. Isolation is often where God does His deepest work within you. This season of separation is not just a period of waiting, but a sacred time when God purges what doesn't serve His purpose and fortifies what does. The path to blessing requires a foundation of strong character, a strength that isn't merely polished on the outside, but solid within. God knows that the blessings He has in store for you carry weight, and only a purified heart and mind can steward them well. Thus, He sets you apart not to discourage you, but to refine you, shaping you into someone capable of carrying His purpose with integrity. God's refining process in isolation addresses the hidden areas of your life. We all have aspects of ourselves, thoughts, habits, or tendencies that, left unchecked, can weaken our spiritual journey. In the solitude of isolation, these areas are exposed, not to condemn, but to correct. Without the distractions of daily life, you're given the time and perspective to confront what's within. God uses this season to bring to light any pride, fear, impatience, or resentment that may linger unnoticed in the hustle of daily living. In these moments, He provides you the opportunity to repent, to let go, and to allow His grace to reshape those areas. This inner purification isn't always easy, but it's essential. God desires to bless you abundantly, and He needs to know that the vessel carrying those blessings is purified and fit for the purpose He has designed. Isolation also brings forth patience and humility, qualities essential for stewarding God's blessings. In the quiet of waiting, you learn to surrender your timelines and expectations, recognizing that God's timing is perfect. This patience builds a humility that understands God's plans are greater than our own. When you're used to taking action, being still can feel uncomfortable, even frustrated. But it's in this waiting that God teaches you to trust His wisdom, His timing, and His way. Patience is not passive, it's an active reliance on God's sovereignty. This reliance humbles you, reminding you that His plans are far above ours and they unfold at the right time. Isolation cultivates a humility that is not just about thinking less of yourself, but about depending more on God. This season also tests and builds your integrity, preparing you to carry blessings without compromising your values. In isolation, there are no spectators, no one to impress, and no need to perform. God teaches you to be genuine, to hold fast to integrity even when no one is watching. Integrity isn't merely about public behavior, it's about a heart that is honest and true before God. When you emerge from isolation, this integrity will be what allows you to handle blessings without being swayed by the opinions or pressures of others. It gives you the strength to make choices that honor God, not just ones that gain approval or ease. In solitude, you become grounded in truth, committed to righteousness, and able to stand firm no matter what comes. Self-control is another characteristic God builds in isolation. You may find yourself tested in areas that require restraint, whether in thoughts, emotions, or actions. Isolation is a time when God strengthens your ability to say no to what isn't beneficial and yes to what aligns with His will. This discipline becomes invaluable when the blessings arrive, as it guards you from distractions and detours that might otherwise compromise your calling. God wants you to enter your blessings with a character that can handle both the abundance and the responsibility with a sense of discernment and focus. Isolation builds this self-control, empowering you to navigate blessings and trials alike without losing sight of His purpose. Forgiveness, too, becomes a lesson in solitude. When you're alone, old wounds, grievances, and unresolved hurts often resurface. God uses this time to heal those places, teaching you to forgive and release anything that might hinder your purpose. Ultimately, isolation teaches you to rely on God's grace rather than your strength. There are moments in this solitude when your weaknesses and flaws become evident and you realize how much you need God's strength. This dependency on grace humbles you, preparing you to carry His blessings with a deep awareness of His mercy and love. You emerge from isolation knowing that the good that lies ahead isn't because of your perfection, but because of God's goodness. You become more compassionate, more patient with yourself and others, and more aligned with God's heart. This character transformation becomes the foundation for the responsibilities and blessings God is preparing to entrust to you. When God isolates you, it's because He sees the fullness of who you are called to become. He knows the potential He's placed within you and the impact He desires for you to make. Through isolation, He molds, shapes, and purifies you, refining your character, so you're not only prepared for blessings, but capable of stewarding them wisely. By the time this season ends, you'll find yourself transformed, carrying a character that is both a reflection of God's love and a testament to His refining power. With a purified heart, humble spirit, and resilient faith, you're prepared to step into your blessings with a character that honors God and impacts the world around you. When God leads you into isolation, it's not to deprive you, but to develop in you a deeper dependence on Him. Isolation removes the familiar supports people, routines, resources that we often look to for comfort and stability. In the quiet and solitude, it becomes evident that these external sources are temporary, whereas God alone remains constant. He becomes your sole refuge, your anchor in the uncertainties of life. This season of solitude is a divine invitation to move from depending on what is temporary to trusting in the one who is eternal. In isolation, there's an opportunity to experience God's provision firsthand. When external resources seem scarce and when solutions aren't immediately visible, you learn to rely on God's wisdom and provision in a profound way. He provides in ways that may surprise you, meeting needs you didn't even realize you had. This dependency shifts your focus, reminding you that He is both your source and sustainer. You start to see that everything, every blessing, every opportunity, every step forward flows from His hand. And through this realization, a confidence grows within you, a faith that isn't shaken by circumstances because it is rooted in God's unfailing provision. Isolation is also a place where God cultivates a deep personal relationship with you. It's in the solitude, free from distractions, that you begin to hear His voice more clearly and recognize His guidance more profoundly. You come to know God intimately, not through someone else's experience, but through your own. In this closeness, you begin to trust Him, not just as a distant provider, but as a personal Father who cares about every detail of your life. This intimacy with God becomes the foundation of your faith, strengthening you for both the blessings and the challenges that lie ahead. You learn that in Him you lack nothing and that His presence alone is more than enough. This dependence on God builds resilience and inner strength. When you rely solely on Him, you develop a confidence that isn't based on your circumstances, but on God's faithfulness. This unwavering trust equips you to face difficulties with peace, knowing that He is in control. Isolation strips away the need to strive or struggle in your own strength, replacing it with the peace of surrender. When you're alone with God, you realize that His strength is made perfect in your weakness. Rather than resisting the solitude, you lean into it, understanding that this season is building a faith that will sustain you when the blessings come. In solitude, you learn that God's presence is a constant source of strength, guidance, and peace. When you're removed from the familiar voices and influences, you find that God's voice is all you need. You begin to depend on His word, on His spirit, and on His promises to navigate each day. This reliance creates a spiritual fortitude that is prepared to handle both abundance and adversity. You gain an unshakable faith that will remain steadfast, no matter the season. You know that He is with you, guiding you through every step, and that His plans for you are good. This season of dependence fosters gratitude and humility. You come to see that every good thing in your life flows from God's hand, and this awareness fills you with gratitude. You stop taking blessings for granted, recognizing them as expressions of His love and care. This gratitude keeps you grounded, making you aware of His provision and faithfulness at every turn. You develop a humble spirit, understanding that you are not self-sufficient, but sustained by God's grace. Isolation allows you to see God as the true source of all things, stripping away any illusion of self-reliance and filling you with thankfulness. When isolation draws to a close, you emerge with a dependency on God that is not just a necessity but a joy. You find fulfillment in His presence, peace in His promises, and strength in His faithfulness. Your trust in Him is no longer tied to circumstances or outward blessings. It is rooted in a personal relationship that has grown in the quiet places. This dependence transforms you, preparing you to handle blessings with humility and gratitude, knowing that they come from His hand alone. As you step into your purpose, you do so with a faith that is resilient, a heart that is humble, and a soul that finds rest in God alone. When God leads you into a season of isolation, it's often a precursor to significant changes in your life, greater responsibilities, and blessings that require you to be spiritually and emotionally equipped. God knows that with every new level of blessing comes an increase in responsibility, and He desires to prepare you thoroughly for what lies ahead. This preparation period is not merely about waiting, it's a time of training, growth, and empowerment for the journey that awaits you. Isolation provides an opportunity for God to equip you with the necessary skills and insights that will be critical as you step into new responsibilities. It's during these quiet moments that you receive revelation, learn new lessons, and develop a deeper understanding of your purpose. God often uses this time to impart wisdom, teaching you principles that will guide your actions and decisions when you enter into your blessings. This training might not be apparent at first, but the insights you gain in isolation will become invaluable as you navigate the complexities of life and leadership. Moreover, during isolation, God builds your capacity to handle the weight of increased responsibility. Just as a seed must break open to grow into a strong tree, you must be prepared to endure the pressures that come with God's plans for your life. Isolation allows you to grow your spiritual roots deep, establishing a foundation that can withstand storms and challenges. When you emerge from this season, you do so with a strength that is forged in the fires of solitude, ready to take on new roles with confidence and grace. In this period, God may also call you to develop new gifts or refine existing ones. Perhaps you've been given a vision or a calling that requires skills you haven't yet cultivated. God uses isolation to instruct you, leading you to resources, mentors, or experiences that will enhance your abilities. This preparation is crucial because God's blessings are not just given for your benefit, but often for the benefit of others. He desires that you step into your purpose equipped and ready to serve effectively, and this training can only happen in the quiet moments of isolation. God also uses isolation to instill a sense of responsibility within you. It's a time for reflection, for examining your motives, and for aligning your heart with His will. As you wait, you become increasingly aware of the impact of your actions, decisions, and attitudes on others. God teaches you that with His blessings comes a higher calling to serve, lead, and bless those around you. You come to understand that you are not just a recipient of His grace, but also a conduit through which His love and power flow to others. This preparation also involves a strengthening of your character, which is essential for handling the increased responsibilities that come with blessings. God knows that if your character is not solid, the blessings can easily become a burden instead of a joy. Isolation serves as a time for character development, where pride, impatience, and selfishness can be confronted and transformed into humility, patience, and servanthood. As God works in your heart, He prepares you to be a wise and compassionate leader, one who can steward blessings with integrity and purpose. In the quietness of isolation, you learn to prioritize what truly matters. The distractions of life fall away, leaving you with clarity about your values, goals, and purpose. You begin to discern what is essential for your journey and what might be a distraction from your calling. This clarity becomes vital as you step into new responsibilities. You're equipped to make choices that align with God's will, ensuring that your path reflects His purpose and brings Him glory. Ultimately, isolation is about preparation for the blessings that God has in store for you. It's a time when God cultivates a heart of gratitude, helping you appreciate the magnitude of what is to come. As you sit in His presence, He reminds you that the blessings are not just for your benefit, but also for the purpose of advancing His kingdom. You learn to see the bigger picture, understanding that your life is a part of a greater narrative that He is weaving together. When the time comes for you to step into your blessings, you do so with a sense of readiness and anticipation. You're equipped to embrace new responsibilities, armed with the wisdom and character necessary to lead effectively. The isolation that once felt like a season of waiting becomes a launching pad into a future filled with purpose and impact. You realize that this journey was not merely about receiving blessings, but about becoming the person God created you to be, someone capable of handling great things for His glory. You emerge not just with blessings, but with a heart aligned with God's will, ready to fulfill your calling and make a difference in the world around you. As we reflect on the purpose of isolation before blessings, let us remember that each season of solitude is a divine orchestration, a sacred invitation from God to prepare our hearts and minds for what lies ahead. In those quiet moments, we learn that isolation is not a punishment, but a powerful tool for transformation. It is during these times that God refines our character, strengthens our dependence on Him, and equips us for greater responsibilities. So as you find yourself in moments of solitude, embrace them. Recognize them as opportunities for growth, reflection, and deepening your relationship with God. Understand that He is not just preparing you for blessings, He is preparing you to be a blessing to others. Each challenge faced in isolation is a stepping stone toward the greater purpose He has for your life. When the time comes for you to step into your season of abundance, do so with confidence. Know that you have been shaped, molded, and prepared to not only receive, but also to steward the blessings that God has entrusted to you. Carry with you the lessons learned in solitude, the strength gained in weakness, and the faith nurtured in dependence. May you emerge from your seasons of isolation as a beacon of hope and light, ready to impact the world around you. Remember, God's blessings are not just for your enjoyment, but for His glory and the good of those He calls you to serve. Stand firm in your identity as His beloved, equipped for greatness and poised to fulfill your divine purpose. Let us walk boldly into the future God has prepared for us, knowing that every moment spent in isolation was a crucial step toward the fulfillment of His magnificent plans. Thank you